Hello, today is the 24th of June 2023, and we'll talk about several architects today. I will begin with Lilly Reich, born in 1885 and died in 1947. Let's read a little bit about her. So Lilly Reich, born the 16th of June 1885 and died in December 1947, was a German designer of textiles, furniture, interiors, and exhibition spaces. She was a close collaborator with of Ludwig Mies van der Rohe for more than 10 years during the Weimar period in the 1920s and the early 1930s. Reich was an important figure in the early modern movement in architecture and design. Her fame was posthumous, as the significance of her contribution to the work of Mies van der Rohe and others with whom she collaborated only became clear through the research of later historians of the field. Reich was born in Berlin on June 16, 1985. She was 2 years older than Le Corbusier. In 1908, she put her embroidery training. So this is very important. She started in the field of textiles, fabrics, embroideries, training to use when she went to Vienna to work for the Vienna workshop of Joseph Hoffmann, a visual arts production company of designers, artists, and architects. Joseph Hoffmann was a very important Austrian architect and designer. She returned to Berlin by 1911. There she began to design furniture and clothing. She also worked as a shop window decorator at this time. The following year, she joined the Deutsche Werkbund, or German Work Federation, a group similar to the Vienna workshop, whose purpose was to help improve competitiveness of German companies in the global market. That year, she designed a sample working class flat in Berlin, Gewerkschaftshaus, or trade union house. It received much praise for the clarity and functionalism of the furnishings. She contributed work to the Werkbund exhibition in Cologne, in Germany in 1914, and in 1920 Lilly became the first woman elected to the governing board of the Deutsche Werkbund. From 1924 to 1926, she worked at the Messement or Trade Fair office in Frankfurt am Main. There she was in charge of organizing and designing trade fairs. It was there that she met Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, vice president of the Deutsche Werkbund. This sparked a period of involvement of furniture for van der Rohe in, well, seems to be a translation from another language, maybe German into English. It's not perfect, but that's how I took it from Wikipedia. So she became a collaborator of Mies van der Rohe on many projects from that time on. In 1927, the two worked on the Wohnung in Stuttgart for the Werkbund. She designed many interiors for this exhibition, including living space in mirror glass. During her career, she designed some store windows, exhibition displays, and fashion. In 1929, she became the artistic director for the German contribution to the Barcelona World Exposition, where Mies van der Rohe designed his world-famous pavilion. This is where the famous Barcelona chair made its first appearance. This pavilion was considered the highlight of the design effort. So the Barcelona pavilion, it seems, was designed by both Mies van der Rohe and Lilly Reich. And so was the furniture, the famous Barcelona chair that was built on the occasion of building that pavilion. In 1932, Reich was asked by Mies van der Rohe to teach at the Bauhaus and direct the interior design workshop. At that time, Mies van der Rohe was the director of the Bauhaus. Her tenure was short-lived, as the Bauhaus was closed in 1933 by the Nazis, who referred to it as an Oriental palace and synagogue filled with Bolsheviks and cultural Marxists dedicated to degenerate art. This is how the Nazis thought of the Bauhaus. After the Second World War, she briefly taught at the Universität der Künste in Berlin, University of Art, but was forced to resign due to ill health. She died 2 years later in 1947 in Berlin. There are streets named after Lilly Reich in the German cities of Munich, Hildesheim, and Ingolstadt. So there are books about her, Lilly Reich, designer and architect. This is one of them, published by the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Or this one, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe and Lilly Reich, furniture and interiors. This chair apparently was designed by her, or at least in cooperation with Mies van der Rohe, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. And it must be said that apparently before he met Lilly Reich, Mies van der Rohe didn't design furniture, and after they broke up, also he kind of stopped designing furniture. So it appears that Lilly Reich had an important contribution in the production and the design, the creation of important pieces of furniture signed by Mies van der Rohe, but they should have been designed by both, if not mainly by Lilly Reich. I will show some pictures of Lilly Reich. Here is one of them. Here they are, Mies on the right, Lilly Reich on the left. Maybe not the most flattering picture of her, but there are others where she asserts herself as an interesting person and obviously a very talented and dedicated designer and architect. Here they are, perhaps on the ship towards America, either going towards America or returning from America. Anyway, they are on the ship. And here there is a composite poster, showing both of them with a famous Barcelona chair in the center at the top, that apparently she had a very significant role in the creation of. Here she is, as a younger person sitting on a chair designed, I don't know about by whom, or maybe by herself. Anyway, some drawings by Lilly Reich. Well, what happened was in 1933 or 1934, Mies left Europe, left Germany, and went to the United States. Well, because the Nazis closed the Bauhaus. He went to teach in Chicago, and Lilly Reich herself crossed the ocean a little bit later, but then she returned to Germany, to Berlin, and then the war came and her studio was destroyed. Also, it has to be said that she took care of the archive of the works of Mies van der Rohe and Lilly Reich, and also the archive of very, very rich archive with the drawings and projects of Mies van der Rohe in Germany. So it is thanks to her that many of the works done by Mies van der Rohe were saved. A very generous lady. So these are drawings by Lilly Reich. And I think it's important to remember creators like her, because history is not always very objective. There are important creators whose names are forgotten or neglected, and I think it is important to be just and to acknowledge their presence in the culture, in the architectural culture of the world. Apparently, the Mies van der Rohe Foundation launched in 2019, if I remember correctly, a prize for called the Mies van der Rohe or the Lilly Reich prize of equity in architecture, and I think it's based on I mean, it's addressing particularly the research work about Lilly Reich. From what I read, it seems that Miss van der Rohe never forgave himself that he didn't bring Lilly Reich to the United States together with him, saving her a lot of troubles because of the Second World War. Well, anyway, entanglements between the personal life and the professional life. So, drawings by Lilly Reich. This is a work she did together with Miss van der Rohe, the Women's Fashion Exhibition in Berlin in 1927, the Velvet and Silk Cafe, quite modern for the time. As we read, she was very involved in, in textiles works, in embroideries, in shop windows, in fashion, and so on. So she was the right person for this kind of job. And here is the plan of this cafe. It's almost as if we see some glimpses into. Actually, it is very possible that she had a great influence on Miss van der Rohe, because the truth of the matter is the early works of Miss van der Rohe were very different from works that he did after he met her. This is the model of the for this cafe that they built together. Now I show the Barcelona chair, a famous chair that was built, conceived and built on the occasion of building the Barcelona pavilion for Germany in Barcelona. The one that stands now, it is a recreation. It was rebuilt, that pavilion, which can be seen these days in Barcelona. This is the chair that something that she had a major role in creating, the Barcelona chair, assigned initially to Miss van der Rohe, but Lilly Reich had an important role in its creation. It's very elegant and very subtly modern. The Barcelona chair, Lilly Reich and Miss van der Rohe. And here is a picture of this famous chair inside the Barcelona pavilion. You see glimpses of the ornamentation that is present in this famous work of modern minimalism, if we are to call it so. We see clearly that Miss van der Rohe, or maybe Miss van der Rohe and Lilly Reich, they employed a very, very rich marble, very ornamental. You can see there, and also inside the pavilion, there is an example of this very, very ornamental marble that they used. So I say this because modernism, even in its most extreme forms, and even in the case of some very famous modern architects, like in this case, didn't reject ornament. And this is just one example. Here is a book about her on the occasion of the centennial, the Bauhaus centennial, bearing her name there. And as you see, the Barcelona chair is there shown. So it's possible, it's very possible that this chair was actually her creation. Here she is again with two chairs, the Barcelona chair on the bottom, and the Bruno chair that apparently she also authored. Another famous chair, initially attributed to Miss van der Rohe. Okay, so we made this presentation by the way of her birthday on June 16th. Now I will go to a second architect I will talk about today, and that is Adolf Meyer, a very important architect himself, living somehow in the shadow of someone more famous than him, but it is important to talk about him as well. Adolf Meyer, 1881, 1929. So unfortunately, he died at 48, young for an architect. Adolf Meyer was a German architect, a student and employee of Peter Behrens. Meyer became the office boss of the firm of Walter Gropius around 1915 and a full partner afterwards. In 1919, Gropius appointed Meyer as a master at the Bauhaus, where he taught work drawing and construction technique. Meyer is also credited as the co-designer of the Gropius entry for the 1922 Chicago Tribune Tower competition. From 1926, he practiced as an architect in the New Frankfurt project. So we are going to see some of his works. It is said that Walter Gropius either didn't know how to draw or didn't like to draw, and most of the time he associated himself with architects who made the drawings with him or for him. And Meyer was apparently doing just this. And later on, there was Marcel Breuer and perhaps others. Anyway, as we can read here, he was Walter Gropius' right-hand man, his #1 planner and a close confidant. In 1910, they had already worked together on the Fagus factory, one of the most significant buildings in modernist architecture. And indeed, the Fagus factory was a brilliant building. I only wish Gropius remained, firmly rooted in that modernism. In my opinion, the earliest works by Walter Gropius are more interesting and significant and creative than his later works. This is what I think. This was Adolf Meyer, the close collaborator and partner of Walter Gropius. So between 1895 and 1897, Adolf Meyer completed a 2-year apprenticeship with a cabinet maker in Germany. He also received instruction in drawing. He then worked in the furniture workshops in Köln, Krefeld, and Düsseldorf until 1901. From 1903, he attended the School of Applied Arts in Köln, Cologne. From 1904, he studied in Düsseldorf under Peter Behrens and Johannes Ludovicus Matthäus Lauberix. In 1907, Behrens hired his former student to work in his studio in Berlin. Between 1909 and 1910, Meyer worked for Bruno Paul. The same year, Walter Gropius hired him as the office manager at his studio. So obviously he was a very sought after architect. This collaboration, which lasted until 1914, resulted in a number of important 20th century buildings, such as the Faguswerk Karl Benscheid in Alfeld under the Leine of 1910, and an office building and factory for the Deutsche Werkbund, the German Work Federation, with which was involved, as we read also, Lilly Reich. Exhibition in Köln. It was a very important exhibition in Köln in 1914, but unfortunately, that exhibition, all the buildings were demolished because the First World War started in 1914. So when Gropius' practice closed down, Meyer became office manager for the steel construction company of Brest and Company in Berlin. In 1919, Walter Gropius brought Adolf Meyer to the Staatliches Bauhaus Weimar as an assistant for the architecture department. So Adolf Meyer indeed was involved also in the teaching at the Bauhaus. Here he directed Gropius' private architecture office and taught technical drawing and construction from 1920 to 1925. Together with Walter Mark, he was the site manager for the Haus am Horn project. In 1924, he was responsible for the compilation and typographic development of the book A Prototype House, published by the Bauhaus Weimar as the third volume in the series of Bauhaus books. And this is this house, Haus am Horn, that was designed together with Walter Mark. Again, we are talking here about the beginnings of modernity and about significant efforts to, to provoke a change in the field of architecture, design, and so on. But this is an interesting house he designed together with Walter Gropius, or worked together with Walter Gropius from 1920 to 1922, an unexpected house, considering that we think that Walter Gropius, as the founder of the Bauhaus, was kind of an international style architect. It is not true. At the beginning, the Bauhaus was almost a mystical school. It was in part an expressionistic school. Walter Gropius, in the manifesto for the Bauhaus, expressed a very strong exalted view about architecture and the fine arts. And the last word of that manifesto is faith. But this house, Sommerfeld House, it's a house which has nothing to do with modernity. Well, it has elements of arts and crafts. It has a connection with what we call tradition. So this is what they built. When was it built? In 1920, 1922. At that time, Walter Gropius already was the director of the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus was founded in 1919 by Walter Gropius. So while leading the school, he was creating this house together with Adolf Meyer. And if you see pictures of the interior of the house, you'll be amazed. Look at this. Yes, it has elements of arts and crafts, Art Deco, slight expressionism, but it's not in any way connected with the aesthetics of the buildings erected by Walter Gropius in Dessau for the Bauhaus just a few years later. Look at this again. It's a different kind of architecture. And at that time, Adolf Meyer collaborated with Walter Gropius. But the proposal for the Chicago Tribune Tower was very different from this house. And I think this house should be considered carefully when assessing the work of Walter Gropius, and now we know also the work of Adolf Meyer. A very interesting house and very different from what we expected from the founder of the Bauhaus. But initially, as I said, the Bauhaus had nothing to do with what later was called the international style. Initially, Walter Gropius invited great painters like Kandinsky and Paul Klee to teach at the Bauhaus. He invited Johannes Itten, a painter and a mystic, then Lionel Feininger, also a painter, and so the school at the beginning was a center for creativity in which there were no architects, with the exception of Walter Gropius himself. And then, of course, he invited also Adolf Meyer. But at the beginning, there were many more artists. Well, it was still a small school with a small group of people, but excellent creators, as I said. So anyway, I think the beginnings of the Bauhaus are very, very interesting and unfortunately a little bit forgotten. Again, who would have expected such a house to be built by the founder of the Bauhaus? Well, it was. I mean, even the poster or whatever it is, the graphics, visualizing this house are, expressionistic in nature, exalted. Now we arrive at a very, very important modern work done by Gropius and Meyer, Adolf Meyer, the Phagos Factory, and it still stands. And it is a very fine example of a modernism which was genuinely needed and aesthetically liberating. The Phagos Factory, Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, whom we are celebrating today. What exactly he did, he worked together with Walter Gropius, but we don't know exactly to what extent Adolf Meyer contributed to this building. I imagine it was more than just drafting for Walter Gropius. He was a partner, a collaborator of Walter Gropius. They built it together. They created it together. I think it is fair to say so. And the fact that he is acknowledged as co-author of the Chicago Tribune Tower amplifies the feeling that indeed the role of Adolf Meyer was important. Look at these magnificent windows at the Phagos Factory. It's a beautiful photograph of a beautiful window that is able in this way to animate the facade and also let the fresh air get in. I like these windows very much. So the Phagos Factory. Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer. As it is today. You see, the idea that modern architecture totally eliminated ornament is not true. Like even here, we see clearly an ornamentation on this door, which is perhaps not the main entrance door into the building, and yet there is a sensitivity at work that manifested itself through, yes, abstracted, yes, a simple, but it's clearly ornamented, this simple door. The Phagos Factory. Maybe Adolf Meyer was more involved in the technical aspects of the making of the building, but the technical aspects of the building did not turn their back on design. In fact, it was a unique process through which formal matters, design matters were simultaneously addressed with them, with the technical aspects. So in this respect, I think Adolf Meyer can be considered to be a co-creator of this building. Now, the Verbund exhibition in Köln in 1914, another very interesting building built by them, Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer. This is the building, and as I said, it was destroyed, demolished a few months later because the First World War started. And there were other important buildings built on the occasion of the Werkbund in Köln in 1914 by van der Velde or Bruno Taut, the famous glass pavilion, which was also demolished. This is the human wisdom, you know. We are able to create, but unfortunately, we are also quite able to destroy. This is the work by Adolf Meyer and Walter Gropius, or Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, and I think it's brilliant, but it doesn't exist. The First World War started. Thus, this building was demolished. Look at this beautiful staircase. It's gone. So this was built in 1914 on the occasion of the Werkbund exhibition in Köln, in Germany, or Cologne, as the city is also named. Now, the Chicago Tribune competition, which they didn't win, but their project is well documented and well known. It was a very famous competition, which was won by a North American architect, Raymond Hood. But there were very important architects from other parts of the world who contributed with works for this very creative competition. This is the tower proposed by Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, which didn't win. The project that won was a neo-Gothic building, a neo-Gothic project. Here is Walter Gropius with the tower behind him. But we know that Adolf Meyer was a co-author of this project, so it was not done alone by Walter Gropius. And here we see some other works. The third one is by the famous proposal by Adolf Loos. The one on the left is by Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer. I don't know who did the second one, and I'm not sure about the last one. Maybe it was Hugo Herring, but I'm not sure. Anyway, the first one, Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer. The third one, Adolf Loos. And here we see the winning entry. The one on the left is by Raymond Hood, the one that was built. And I think the second prize went to Saarinen, but it was not built, of course, the second prize. And what you see on the right is very possible because this competition for the Chicago Tribune was happened two times, once in the 20s and once in the I think it was in the 80s, when it was relaunched, the competition, but just to imagine another Chicago Tribune Tower at the time of postmodernism. And I think the one on the right is an example of that time. Unfortunately, only half serious, at the most half. Now the Amhorn, the house Amhorn with George Muke. Well, at the beginning I read that he collaborated with someone else, but I think this is the correct naming of the house and authorship. He worked. I'm talking about Adolf Meyer, not Walter Gropius. It's a house without glory towards the outside, but it's kind of interesting. I don't know if I if I should read now the whole text. Here is the plan. And it's interesting because of the central space of the house, which doesn't have windows towards the outside except at the top, as you can see, being higher the space than the rooms around it. So Adolf Meyer contributed or worked on this project as well with George Mucke. So you see here, the house am Horn, as it was named, was designed by George Mucke and Adolf Meyer as a prototype for affordable housing, which could be quickly and inexpensively mass-produced. The use of experimental building techniques and materials not only helped to achieve this goal, but dovetailed perfectly with the increased focus on functionalism in the Bauhaus curriculum. But this was in 1923. We know that from 1919, maybe for a year or two, anyway, at the beginning of the Bauhaus, the school was not yet addressing functionalism in very explicit terms at all, I would say. And we saw that house built in 1920, 1921 by Adolf Meyer and Walter Gropius, or should I say Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer. Anyway, Mucke, who was a painter and teacher at the Bauhaus, had already been in the process of designing a house for himself and his wife when the school announced a competition for a model residence. His winning entry was bold in its simplicity, a square plan with a ring of rooms surrounding a central living room. Each space was designed with an explicit program in mind and intentionally specialized so that it could not be used for any other purpose. Aside from the living room, the house comprised a room for the man, a room for the lady, a room for children, a guest room, dining room, kitchen, and a work niche. So this is the drawing with the plans and the section and the elevations. And a few images of the house as it is now. I don't know who designed the furniture, maybe George Mucke. So they won the competition for a house, an affordable house, but it was built initially for him, George Mucke, and his wife. The children's room, an axonometric view of the project. The drawing shows a sensibility that is not so obvious in the actuality of the building. I wish some qualities, plastic qualities of the drawing would show also in the physicality of the built work, but it doesn't. Outside, inside is a different story. It's a little better inside, I would say. Anyway, Adolf Meyer was probably contributing with his technical expertise and his architectural knowledge, since George Mucke was a painter. The kitchen. Now, we could very well ask, is this house better architecturally than the house on the left? It's different. We cannot truly say it's better. It's perhaps easier to build. Indeed could be mass produced, but the one on the left, it needs maybe naive, solidity is also to be contemplated for maybe from a different position, contemplative position, but it's still worthy of consideration. And it would be interesting actually to compare two very different, radically different kinds of architecture. Not that this is the only example, but this is one of the many examples where we have the old and the new in close proximity. Now, this is a work in Frankfurt that he did by himself, Adolf Meyer, meaning as the architect of this building. He didn't work any longer here with Walter Gropius. Okay, so I will end this presentation here on Lilly, Reich, and Adolf Meyer. Let's have a short talk, if you don't mind.